So we're going to work into the deed team now, and Susanna will coordinate this.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. So today, basically going to give you a bit of an overview, and similar to what Rod presented, it's about what we've done recently in the last couple of months, as well as some of our proposed activities for the 2019-2020 AOP. You should all be familiar, hopefully, with the fact that the EPPRD area is actually divided into about 4 program areas. I'm going to present on the incursion management. Felicity Andriunas, the manager of the EPPRD, will do on EPPRD management, and Stephen, who is currently in Sydney, will reflect on the National EPP training program. Just before we do that though, just a quick overview of some of our key drivers that are helping to inform activities during 2019 and 2020. These shouldn't come as any surprise. Incident debriefs, the outcomes and findings from those, training exercises, and the EPPRD review, so all the evaluation activities that are flowing out of those. Obviously, the PHA strategy is definitely informing our AOP for next year. The member survey outcomes. We have a number of ongoing policy issues and also opportunities that we will be carrying forward. Where members have identified capability gaps, so that's often in the training area where they'll say, we want to do a simulation exercise to test X. And incursion management, I guess that's fundamental to everything that we do. Before I move on, PHA has a number of roles and responsibilities defined in the deed, as well as our custodial role. I'm sure you'll be quite happy to note that late last year we had an internal review done by an external expert that had qualifications in quality management and emergency response. That internal audit, which was reported to our board, was a successful audit. In that we showed that we're 100% compliant with all the activities that we're required to do under the deed, but we also show a focus on continual improvement. So going straight into incursion management, just as a quick update for what we've been doing in the last few months, there's been reviews of owner reimbursement cost assessments related to the citrus canker, so facilitating and helping out for Western Australia and Northern Territory, the lead agencies. There's been a number of activities. We're winding up a couple of our responses, and so some financial aspects have to be addressed. You would have all received, well, not all, some of you would have, I should say, actually received from Felicity a Capra beetle debrief, and those outcomes are being analysed at the moment. And we've just kicked off a brown mummer-rated stink bug debrief out of session. Should note citrus canker and banana freckle will also be doing their debriefs in the next couple of weeks, so we'll be starting those. The annual general debrief is underway. We've doubled the number of submissions from last year, so that's a good outcome, but I still would like a number more. We've only received 6 or 7 to date. Due date was the 15th of March, but if you really have commentary you'd like to make, we would welcome those comments within the next week, please. And I'd also like to highlight, I'm just in the planning process of actually doing quite a detailed, in-depth evaluation of ORC assessments from both a policy and operational aspect for citrus canker, and have been in discussions with industry and government on that. So this slide here is to show a little bit what we've done recently, but also to inform where we're heading in 2019-2020. Up on the left in 2018-19, you can see a number of cost-shared emergency responses that were occurring under the EPPRD. Those that are in green are still ongoing. Those that are in blue, grey or purple, depending on your monitor, actually had National Management Group sign-off to finish in 2018. So what you can see on the right-hand side for 2019-2020 is some anticipated timeframes for actually closure of those responses. So the final financial and debrief matters will be resolved within the next quarter or the next half for the majority of those responses that are still currently outstanding. A number of them are obviously subject to current review outcomes. But I guess I'd also like to highlight, out of the 4 that we closed, I feel they've all been successful, 3 of which, though, we actually did successful eradication, one of which, giant pine scale, we successfully transitioned to management. So those activities associated with those ongoing responses will inform 2019-2020 activities. As indicated in this next slide, we will also be doing some debriefs, so a focus on really learning from what we do. Citrus canker, a lot of that work will be done it will start this financial year, but it will continue into next. Exotic fruit flies in the Torres Strait, that's coming to an end. We'll do a review of that, as is Varroa jacobsoni. And as I articulated, the dedicated ORC debrief for citrus canker will be ongoing, as will the annual general debrief. And without a doubt, I wish not, but without a doubt, there's likely to be new incursions to deal with. What I'd like to do now is hand over to Felicity to go through the EPPRD management.
Thank you, Susanna. So I'll just start with the highlights in the deed management area over the last few months. And these include the application for admission of Australian grape and wine as a party to the deed in replacement of Australian vignerons. This process should be completed very shortly. All votes received so far are in favour of admission, and we only need one more vote in favour to meet the requirements under the deed. We've been continuing our activity to address policy issues through issue resolution groups, and 3 groups in particular have convened in the last few months. Oh, sorry, this is the slide that we're on now. And these include in relation to the impacted owners and owner reimbursement costs issue resolution group, application of the deed at the border, and the complexes issue resolution group, which the parties agreed to form at the November meeting last year. I wanted to take the opportunity to point out that the Commonwealth funded project to improve functionality of the CCEPP site on the biosecurity portal is due to be completed shortly, and this new enhanced site will be launched in the next few weeks. We've been continuing to work with industry to progress the development of owner reimbursement cost evidence frameworks. And the aim here is we're working to establish a draft hierarchy of evidence for all cropping sectors. So over the next few months, we want to try and achieve this goal by continuing to work with industries that are not currently covered by a framework. We've also had a focus on developing or continuing development of guideline documents on financial management of response plans, as well as owner reimbursement costs. And we're also preparing for a financial needs analysis, which will get underway this week. So in terms of our future delivery for 1920 in the deed management area, we will be continuing the review of the signatories' normal commitments. So part 2 of the review will commence in 1920 and will establish a means to assess parties' ability to meet their normal commitments, and it will also enable the identification and consideration of the national gaps in meeting normal commitments. We will continue addressing ongoing policy issues in collaboration with parties, inclusive of convening issue resolution groups. The scope for the 2020 formal review of the deed will be determined, and this will be ahead of the review being initiated early in the following financial year, so in the 2021. We'll be undertaking a review of industry liaison and engagement in a response, and this will be informed by our experience in recent incidents, as well as information or existing national information in relation to industry liaison. And the outcomes from this review will feed into the annual plant plan review, which will be undertaken as usual ahead of the November meeting. And we'll be also focusing continued work on new and revised supporting documents, including guidelines for confidentiality, definition of an emergency plant pest, as well as industry liaison job cards. And finally, we'll keep working with parties to address any new policy and process issues as they arise, as well as opportunities for continual improvement.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do now is welcome Stephen Dibley to talk through the training aspects.
Thanks, Susanna, and good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me all right. Yeah, so just in the same sort of manner, just going to give you a quick update on what we've been up to in the recent time in the training space. So for me, the big ticket items that we've run through are two simulation exercises that we ran at the end of, or ran through last year. That's being exercise Be Prepared and exercise Fastidious. I think both of those went really well. What we're at the moment is sort of documenting, writing up the reports, and they will be coming out in the next couple of weeks/months for those and sort of wrapping up. Other big activities is around industry board training. As suggested, I've been up here doing some training today in Sydney, and we've done a couple of those activities recently, and hopefully going to continue doing those in the next couple of months. The other big thing to highlight is the running of our first formal Biosecurity Incident Standard Operating Procedure, or BISOP, workshop. We ran that with the Australian Melon Association in January. Went down really, really well. Really happy to report that we got a lot of out of the discussion and out of the document that we produced at the end. I just want to highlight that in the remainder of the 2018-19 financial year, there's still a lot of activity going on in the training space. I'll be running a sugar biosecurity workshop in May for obviously the sugar industry, delivering a regional training workshop, and we're also going to be contributing to Exercise Crown and Anchor, which is a simulation exercise for the National Biosecurity Response Team, focusing in on responding to incidents in Commonwealth places. And very, very shortly, we'll be coming out with a new bulk course around grower reporting. Thanks, Susanna. The next slide. Thank you. And so what we're proposing to move forward to in 2019-2020 for the training space is to continue our focus on our core training that we deliver. So things like online courses, regional workshops, training industry boards and governments, NMGC and CC training, that includes the Secretariat, and generation of awareness material. We'll also be continuing the rollout of the BISOPs in this next year with at least 2 industries that we'll run through. If we can manage to get the capacity up, we'll try and do as many of those as we possibly can. Following on from what Felicity was highlighting around looking at industry liaison space in a response, once the work in the deed policy area is complete or has been run through a fair way, we'll look at developing up some actual training to support this, and we'll be aiming to both develop and deliver that in the next 12 months. We definitely have at least 1 simulation exercise on scope for next year, and that'll be in the cotton industry, so exercise Blueprint, looking at cotton blue disease, running in August. Highly likely to have additional simulation exercises also running through this year, but nothing else locked in. Just also to highlight that we will continue to be very active in the national, more generic biosecurity emergency management space. So we're going to continue on the advisory committee for the National Biosecurity Response Team, and in the coordination and contribution to a new community of practice that's just been formed for all biosecurity trainers in Australia. Thanks, Susanna.
Thanks, Steve. Just to finish off very quickly, some of the other areas that we work in, these fit inside the cross-sectoral national committees where they're relevant to emergency response. So a couple of the committees that we're actually, PHA works with government on is the National Biosecurity Communication and Engagement Network, previously known as the NCN. So we have representative on that. We do a lot of cross-sectoral engagement with Animal Health Australia through their EADRA program, so that they can learn from us, but we can equally learn from them. Felicity just recently, Monday, attended the EADRA workshop, which is the equivalent of our May and November meetings. And, you know, as Greg referred to earlier on, through some of these committees currently, we're actually contributing, I guess, our EPPRD knowledge to the potential development of a weed deed. So thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Susanna. I'm just watching the people managing the website and my text, and it looks like there's not a lot of questions, which is fine. I might just remind everybody that consistent with what we did last year, we're actually recording this presentation, and we'll chop it into relevant sections like preparedness and surveillance and diagnostics and things. and they'll be available on the website in a short period of time.